In this lesson, we're going to focus on the SOAP envelopes that are exchanged between the RAND service, the SOAP-based service we looked at last time, and a client. We'll look at the client shortly. So here is the SOAP-based service. It's packaged in a jar file for convenience. So the jar file contains, again, the RAND service, which is the SOAP-based service, and the RAND publisher, which publishes the service. So let me execute that. Java -jar rand publish.jar, and again, that jar file is in the working files. There's a little printout just to confirm that the service is started. It's listening on the local machine at port 8888, and the URI is RS. Here's another prompt. What I have here is a Perl client. I want to make sure that the first client is not a Java client, because I want to underscore that SOAP-based services, like their REST-style counterparts, are language neutral. So let's execute this client, rand client.pl, and the screen is now filled with the SOAP envelopes. They're not formatted very well. We'll look at these in the editor shortly, but all the way down near the end, you can see response is 5777 and so forth. That's the randomly generated value that is returned from the service to the Perl client. I'm now in my Emacs editor, and we're looking at the working file soapenvelopes.txt. This file is a capture of the wire level activity between the Perl client, which initiates the conversation, and the RAND service, which completes the conversation with a response. I've got some comments started by two sharp signs on the right. From this point all the way down to here is the Perl side, the client side, and from here all the way down to the end is the service side, the Java side. So let's go back up to the top and start. This is a POST request. It's the HTTP request start line. The except at the next line, so you see multipart /*, that MIME type covers, in effect, all multimedia types. What the Perl client is saying is, I'm ready to accept attachments. This accept, of course, is for application SOAP, and the Perl client is acknowledging that it understands SOAP. The rest of this we can pretty much ignore. This maybe deserves quick mention. SOAP action. This indicates the operation that's being invoked is next one instead of next n. So there are only two operations provided in that service. At this line begins the SOAP envelope. So this is the body of the POST request. So the body of the POST request encapsulates a SOAP envelope. And this SOAP envelope is very simple. It has no header. It does have a body, which is required. And down here, this element in effect specifies the operation. Next one as opposed to next n. And you see XSI nil. That's an XML schema data type equals true. What this says in effect is next one takes no arguments. If this were next n, the argument would be a single integer. This line is the HTTP response start line for the response. So this is coming back from the Java service. Most of this, again, we can ignore. The real action is down here with the SOAP envelope. It's formatted slightly differently than the Perl version, and that's because two different libraries are at play, but both libraries are producing standard compliant SOAP envelopes. That's the important part. So the Java envelope, like the Perl envelope, does not have a header. This is such a simple example, one is not required. Here's the SOAP body. This is the next one response, and the return value is 142, so on and so forth. Let me make a point about this value. Notice that it's coming over the wire, of course, as text. And what I want to do now is look at the Perl client to make a point about that text. So here's the Perl client, very straightforward. This line, use SOAPLite, is basically the import of the SOAP library for Perl. Among the dynamic languages, Python, Ruby, Perl, I think it's fair to say, has the best SOAP library. The code is very straightforward. At this line, my $SOAP, so the object reference is $SOAP. We can ignore the Perl syntax pretty much. This is an attempt to connect to the published web service. There's the URL that we've seen before. This next line gets the result, in other words, the response from that web service, and stores the value in a variable called num. That variable is printed out, and as proof of concept, this very last line of the code resets num to whatever that value is plus 100. Perl, under the hood, has converted that text value into an integer value because the Perl SOAP library understands that that value is an integer. We'll get into more details about that a bit later. What we have in this first example is a quick look at the wire level traffic between the Perl client and the Java SOAP-based web service. And what we'll do now is focus a bit more on how the high-level APIs on both the Java side and on the Perl side are able to disguise this underlying SOAP traffic. Notice no place in the code have we seen any XML or SOAP at all.